hello, regular Drews. Just hopping back in here for a quick little note for you. We have created our very first, I guess we're going to call it a regular Drew census. To it's just a survey to get to know you guys a little bit more, get some information. There's demographic questions in there, just some questions about like what kind of content you want to see from us, and then just some stuff for fun. And so, yeah, if you guys have the opportunity to fill that out, we're going to post it on our Instagram. I guess where else will we post it?
I'll put it on our website as well.
Okay.
If you just go to regularnancydrew.com, I'll link it on the homepage so you can find it there. But yeah, we'll put it on Instagram, probably our Twitter as well. And then in the link of this description,
Yes.
the episode description, we'll put
Perfect.
it in there. And we'll leave it open for the entire month of March. So if you guys want to give us some feedback, we would love to hear about your opinions and what you want to hear for the future of Regular Nancy Drew.
Yeah. So fill that out, please.
Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew Detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew. Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
Well, hello, regular Drews.
We're back again with this book.
Back again.
We're here, begrudgingly.
For episode 79. Kori's not excited. When I asked her if she was ready to start recording, she just went, And so I was like, well, I guess that's my sign to click the record button now or never. So yeah.
Hi,
we're
everyone.
here for another Nancy Drew Digest. Hi, everyone. This is number 111, The Secret at Solaire. This was published in 1993. That's the year we were born.
Yes, it was.
This is the climate to which we were born into.
Yes.
Explains a lot
Explains
about
everything.
my current body image issues. Tell us, Kori, tell us.
Oh, yeah. No, come for the eating disorder fuel and stay for the after-school special vibes. But, like, not quite. Like, not enough after-school special vibes. Like,
that's the thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of very intense, like, crash dieting, like, body things, like, very disordered exercising and eating, all happening in this book under the guise of, like, it being, like, a health spa. So we're going to talk about that. But, yeah, no, I expected it to, like, I thought it was going to turn into, like, a Full House level, like,
I had the same thought.
PSA
Full House, exactly.
against crash dieting. Because I remember that episode of DJ Tanner.
Yes.
And how she was crash dieting. She just, like, would stop eating and then she passed out. And I think it was, like, Stephanie or someone was like, you're really hurting yourself and it could be really dangerous and I'm really worried about you. I thought that's what we were going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we get a little bit of that at the end, but not at all
enough.
to the extent that we need it based on the content of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So,
we needed something that really very clearly indicated everything before this was bad and wrong and unhealthy. You shouldn't do this to yourself. I also felt like that episode of Lizzie McGuire where Miranda stops eating too.
Yes, yeah. It was a big 90s, early aughts thing to, like, say, hey, we're now going to make all of our body positive. Well, it's not really body positivity. Like, we're going to make PSAs
it's like the
against,
opposite.
like,
yeah.
But we're going to tell everybody, hey, we know this is an issue. Don't do this thing. We have to appeal to the teens. We have to tell the teens not to do this stuff that they've been doing. And so I really thought that that's what this was, but it's kind of not.
It endorses it a little bit, and then Nancy's like, what if we weren't so extreme? Like, we can still do the dieting, just not as extreme as you want. Just not to the point that you just have bulimia at this point. Maybe we should put a content warning on this. Guys, this was a hard one to get through.
Yeah. Yes.
So there's some very upsetting themes in this, as you were saying, obviously, as it relates to disordered eating and body image issues. Yeah, it's really rough, and if you struggle with those things, maybe this is the episode to skip for you.
Yes.
Just to be honest, because it is pretty bad.
Yeah, there's not really. In our summary, I didn't go deeply into it. Right, there's a few moments that I definitely covered because as they were relevant, you know, but it's just kind of like pervasive all through this book, and I know we're going to talk about it a lot when we get to those moments and when we get to the end. So.
Of course.
So,
well, and I know we complain about this a lot because this has been a theme since the 1930s that it always appears in this book, but this book is like solely about this. It feels like
about it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not just like little comments here and there. It's like the plot of the book.
Right. so it's only that this time, unfortunately.
It's like the whole reason that they're at this place. So
I really thought we were getting facials and mud baths and massages.
Oh my God.
No, we're starving ourselves.
One facial. We got one facial. No massages. Not even really horseback riding. It's mentioned, but nobody does it.
Right.
We go on a hike. I'm sorry. Why are we in the most beautiful, like Tucson, Arizona, mountainous area? We don't get any of that?
No.
Okay, so here comes my other big critique of this book, is that there's just like, it feels like they don't do anything.
No, there's no investigating. It all just falls in Nancy's lap.
There's no mystery.
Yep.
Even as far as like the actual like just structure of the mystery, not even like with what Nancy, Bess, and George are doing, like there's nothing mysterious. I mean, there's mystery, there's mysteriousness, but there's no ambiguous clues. There's no red herrings. We just get, this is what's going on. This is what we think's happening. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
So like there's no twists and turns. It's not like a mystery story. Like when I read this, it's not a mystery. It's maybe an adventure story. You know, because there's some tense situations with the flash flood and, you know, I guess kind of some of the accidents.
Sure.
I don't know. But like there is no mystery to it.
There's even like no reason for Nancy to suspect anyone of all the sabotage that's going on. There's literally even a point where she's like, I wonder if it could be this person. And either Bess or George is like, why would you think that, Nancy? And she's like, I don't know. It just could be. Let's go find out. And then it just is. She's just right for no reason.
No, it's literally, it's because they get one kind of clue with the photograph and the plaid, and they're like, this person seems like they'd wear plaid. Yeah. It's probably that guy.
Yeah. And that's
and it is.
Yeah.
And it is. It's just wild. Yeah, so I'm not a fan of this one. Not only for all of the uncomfortable, you know, body image issue, dieting, eating disorder stuff, but also because it just wasn't a good story.
It wasn't. No.
It was boring, and there was nothing going on.
Yeah.
However, I do think it's hilarious that the entire reason why they're going to the spa is because Bess sold the most of this like clearly like pyramid scheme like beauty product situation.
I almost forgot about that part. As anti like pyramid scheme as I am, that was the least of my worries because everything else in this was so bad.
So for our 3 words, my very first you know, phrase for our 3 words is Bess gets involved in a pyramid scheme.
Yes.
Because I just think it's so funny.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why, but it's like very clearly supposed to be like an analog to like Mary Kay or like, you know, Pampered Chef, but like makeup. Like it's very much MLM vibes. So funny.
Definitely that. Then definitely dieting or eating disorder.
Yes. And then also I think coyotes play an uncomfortably large role in the book. I remember, I didn't put this in the notes, but there's one part where they like just get there to the spa, and then like they're in their little house, their casita, and they hear like howling outside, and Bess and George is like, "Is that wolf? Are there wolves native to this area?" And Nancy was like, "No, they're coyotes. Don't worry. The coyotes are scared of humans. They won't come near us."
I thought of this too. I should have made a note about it, but she is just too cavalier with her attitude toward coyotes. Like,
clearly you are not from the South, because coyotes will eat your dog.
Yeah.
They will like come up and bite you. Like
it might be less, vicious than a wolf would be, but I still do not want to meet a coyote in the middle of the night. No, thank you. Or in the day. To be frank, yeah.
Go wear steel-toed boots to punt those little critters away. No, but I just thought it was so funny. Well, first of all, I thought like, well, I mean, coyotes have got to play into this book somehow for getting this introduction into the beginning. And I guess they kind of do, but it's more just, I think whoever wrote this book really liked coyotes.
They didn't know enough about them, apparently. Don't worry.
Well, but it's just like, they just keep like popping up. It's like in the distance, a coyote howls. And like every so often, it's just, we get mentions of coyotes, even though it doesn't really impact the plot, which I just thought was hilarious.
This author just researched the Southwest area enough to know that coyotes are there, and that stuck with them for some reason.
Yeah. So I think best in a pyramid scheme, dieting, coyotes.
Perfect.
Great. Sold. Okay, you want to jump right in, or is there anything else you want to say first?
Oh, I guess we could talk about the cover. Do we have the same cover this time?
I believe so.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Yeah. I like this cover, I think.
Yeah.
It's definitely, it's very clearly a scene that happens in the book when Nancy's sneaking into the house, right? She's coming out because George is on the lookout, and I love that.
You can see the shadow coming around the corner. Yeah,
around the corner. That's great. And I think it really captures, the Southwest vibes. It looks like Arizona.
Absolutely. Makes me want to go there. Like, I feel like I could jump into this picture. Be nice and warm.
Especially with the like the cactus and the mountains in the background. It's very scenic. And then also I feel like Bess and George, first of all, I just have to give a shout out to my favorite shoe. Both Nancy and George are wearing Keds.
Yes.
I love Keds. I love a Ked. And I swear I have, or it had at one point, this shoe, this exact Ked that Nancy is wearing. And it just makes me feel just like iconic. Anyway, but so I think both of their outfits are great. I think they both look very much like I expect a Nancy and a George to look on a cover. And so I just feel like this is just a really kind of classic example of a really good Nancy Drew cover.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Even George in the stripes, it's like tomboyish with the way the shirt, it even looks like it could be a men's shirt with the sleeves rolled up.
It's deliciously 90s. I love this fashion. It looks so good, so well representative of the time period.
And Nancy's outfit is fashionable but sensible, right? She's wearing, stuff that she can move in, and her hair is pulled back in a headband, I do think their hair is very interesting in this, though, because they're both wearing headbands. And the headbands are so far back on their head and so pushed up so that the hair gets that volume, from the headband. So classic 90s.
Love it.
So yeah, so it's great. Honestly, I think I would wear George's outfit today.
Oh yeah. Yeah, or Nancy's, honestly.
Yeah.
Does George have a perm?
I don't know.
Or is she just naturally curly? I wonder.
I do wonder.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. And also, so the one thing that I think I would change here is the color scheming. Sorry, this is very detailed, and probably none of you would care about this, but I would put Nancy in a blue, and I would put George in a different color, like a green or something else, maybe a warm color. Because
they should have made the leggings blue on Nancy.
Nancy wears blue. I'm sorry, Nancy wears blue. So
yes, sorry.
But other than that, I think it's great. I love it.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Okay, let's do it. So, chapter 1, the girls are headed to the famous Solaire spa out near Tucson, Arizona. And apparently, as I said, Bess won this trip for selling the most Solaire beauty products And she actually won a trip for 2, but she invited both Nancy and George along. So they basically, Nancy and George split the cost of this trip between them for like one person. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't
matter. For the third ticket, yeah.
They're in this van with a bunch of other very wealthy-looking guests. I think they're on the way from the airport to the spa. And also there was a spa employee driving them, and his name is Hank. We learn that the owner of this place and the creators of the Solaire beauty products are named Jacqueline and Laurent Rosier. Mm-hmm. And they bought this place and turned it from a ranch into like a very luxe spa. There's tons of amenities, and it's all decorated very beautifully in the Spanish style. All the guests arrive, and we actually get to meet Jacqueline and her husband, Laurent, as well as all the other members of the staff. We meet Hank, of course, and he's the one who drove us here, and he runs the stables. We also meet a personal trainer named Elaine Girard. I think that's how you say it.
Is that it? I was saying Alan in my head because my French is that bad.
I think it's Elaine.
Might be. I just associate Bess with bad dudes named Alan at this point because it's been too much of a trend.
Yeah, it's Alain. Mm-hmm. Pretty sure that's Elaine in French. But the last name, I think Girard. I don't know. I don't know. I can't speak French. Anyway. And then Kim Foster, who is like the resident nature expert. So apparently each guest gets their own casita, which is very cool. It's like a little house where they're staying as opposed to like, hotel rooms in a main building. They have a bunch of different little houses scattered around. And Kim, the nature expert, leads Nancy, Bess, and George to their casita. And Kim also explains that all of the guests at Spa Solaire have a custom diet and exercise routine crafted for them by the Solaire staff. So that sounds great. Right? And everyone has to have a checkup with the doctor before, I guess, before they can craft this routine for them, right? Which does all make sense and sounds good, theoretically. Mm-hmm. The girls' appointments with the doctor are that afternoon. And then, as they're, getting into the room and putting their stuff down, Bess accidentally kind of lets slip, much to Nancy's embarrassment, that Nancy happens to be a detective. And upon hearing this, Kim gets, a really weird expression on her face, kind of unreadable, and then just kind of quickly excuses herself and says she has to go. Interesting. In their casita is a fruit basket, like a welcome basket for the guests. Bess immediately berates herself for looking at the basket and wanting to eat a piece of fruit. Upon arrival, great.
It's already started.
It's already started. And so she's looking in the basket, and she notices that there's a little small wooden box in it. So she picks it up and she gives it to Nancy. Nancy opens it and drops it with a muffled scream because apparently there is a spider inside, and Nancy is like, it's a black widow? And then I guess when she drops it and the spider falls out, there's a note at the bottom that reads, Bienvenue, welcome to Spa Solaire.
Thanks.
Oh, goodness. At this point, Hank shows up with their luggage. Oh, that's right. Hank brings their luggage in later. And he notices them freaking out about the spider. And so he just goes over and just steps on it. But clearly he didn't realize that it was a black widow. He just thought that it was girls screaming about a spider, right? And so he apologizes for it, but then just kind of leaves. And Nancy decides not to tell him that it was a black widow. They do decide, however, that they should probably report this to the front desk. And so they go up to the front desk and they tell the receptionist about it. And she apologizes and says she'll show the box and the note to the Rosiers, kind of let them know, hey, this happened. And Nancy asks if anybody else has had any issues like this at the spa. And the receptionist says no. Okay. And then they have their appointments with the doctor, Dr. Alicia Benet. And the doctor doesn't tell Nancy anything revolutionary. She thinks Nancy's in fine health and should be fine following just the normal diet and exercise routine at the spa. But then Bess comes out after her appointment and Nancy asks her, oh, hey, how'd your appointment go? And Bess says that the doctor told her that she needs to lose 6 pounds. Red flag number 1.
Yes.
And then, so kind of the whole reason Bess was excited to come here, right, is because Bess, of course, thinks she needs to lose a little bit of weight. And so she wanted to come here to do that. And so Nancy says, oh, like, didn't you know that already? Because Bess seems kind of like upset that the doctor told her this. And Bess says, no, I knew I needed to lose 5 pounds. And I guess I was hoping no one else would notice.
Bess.
This is heartbreaking. It's such a heartbreaking thing to hear come from Bess.
Beating herself up over 1 pound.
1 pound difference. And just like the kind of like sadness of, I was hoping nobody else would notice that I needed to lose that weight. I'm sorry, but like to anybody listening who has had to deal with this or is dealing with this or whatever, like, I just need you to know that I've never ever looked at a person and thought like, oh, they need to lose 5 pounds. Never in my life have I noticed how much I think someone weighs or how much weight they have on their body, like, aside from just generally noticing a person. You know what I mean? I've never been like, oh, this person must lose 6 pounds. Like, what an insane thing.
And even if you had, that'd be a you problem, not a them problem.
Right.
Like,
right. And like, so certainly I know there are doctors who are going to tell people that they need to lose weight, and you know, probably there are people who need to lose weight in order to be healthier. But the concept of it being 6 pounds is like 6 pounds is not going to make or break your health, like it's in one way or the other.
And Bess is so devastated over 1 pound.
1 pound. So it's just this whole idea is like the doctor's not telling Bess, you know that she should exercise more or that she should eat more fruits and vegetables, or she's not telling her anything like that. She's telling her she needs to lose 6 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
That's bananas.
Not like, hey, put on more muscle, which, weighs more anyway, so you would maybe even gain weight in that situation. No, nothing like that. And Bess takes it so personally and ties it into her own, like, intrinsic worth, that she is in this mindset that she can't, like, be a good person or be happy until after she's lost these 6 pounds, because they make her... they invalidate her as a person and her life experience, that she can't just go on with her life and live and enjoy things. No, she has to torture herself until she has made herself worthy by losing that weight.
Sad.
Ugh.
Also, alarmingly, the doctor is putting her on a special diet supplement, which is apparently some kind of protein drink that you're supposed to drink in the morning. And Bess says that it's after you drink it, you don't have to eat anything for hours.
Not how liquid works. Nope.
So again, just all of the like 90s like media is just coming back to be like, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, and like the Yoplait yogurt, like eat a yogurt in the morning and you'll be full all day, and like, Blair Waldorf, a Gossip Girl, eating nothing but half a yogurt cup for lunch, and it's just like all of this, just like, I don't know why yogurt plays so heavily into my concept of this, but it does. But just
if you're very, very good, you can reward yourself with a flavorful stick of gum that tastes like strawberries. That can be your dessert. You can allow yourself that.
So so just like in this little snippet of this book, all that kind of stuff comes flooding back to me.
If I feel like I'm absolutely about to faint, I'll eat a cube of cheese.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, that's from The Devil Wears Prada, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Golly.
it is.
So great to know where we're starting off on. She also is prescribed a crazy amount of exercise in the gym, and we'll talk about that more later too. Also, okay, just quick question. Aren't they supposed to just be here for a week?
Yes.
Or maybe 2 weeks? 6 pounds in a week?
That's dangerous.
I mean, maybe the doctor wasn't trying to say she needs to lose that 6 pounds in this week, and just maybe in general, it's not really clear. But like, Bess clearly thinks that she needs to lose the 6 pounds in this week. So, Don't do that. Don't try to do that to yourself, please.
Nothing that you are doing this week is going to have a lasting effect by any means. Maybe like picking up some habits of eating more vegetables. If you sustain that for a long time, sure, maybe eventually that would help. But this is not sustainable, what they're proposing that best do. No.
Anyway, so that's their doctor's appointments. And later, this is so bananas too. I almost forgot about this part. So they get to dinner that night, and George and Nancy are shocked by how small the portions are at dinner. And Nancy's even kind of confused by this because the doctor didn't say that they needed to be on any special kind of diet, right? They say, oh no, you're healthy, so you shouldn't need to change your habits, right?
It's so small, they literally think it's the appetizer when it comes out. They're like, where's the rest of the food? And it's like, no, that was it. That's your dinner.
And so they're talking about this, and they're thinking about this when Elaine, the personal trainer, comes by their table to talk to them about their exercise programs for the week or whatever. And George asks if they can get extra food, and Elaine says no.
I'm sorry. And they probably paid how much to be here?
That's the thing. And I think even they talked to like another guest at dinner who also was like, this is insane. Like the portions are so small. I'm so hungry. I'm going to go out for like a steak or something after this. Is what he said. And yeah, no, it's like this incredibly expensive spa supposed to be for the uber wealthy, like celebrities, like really rich people. And they won't feed them extra food when asked. That's okay. You guys run from this place, flee this place. It's giving horror movie vibes already. Anyway, later, George and Nancy both head to the tennis courts because there's some tennis pros doing a demonstration, and I guess both George and Nancy really like tennis. And they both gather around some other guests to watch. And during this demonstration, Nancy runs into Kim again. Kim's also there. And Kim kind of pulls Nancy away and lowers her voice and says, Nancy, you know, I've actually been looking for you. I've been trying to give you this note. I think you must have dropped it. And Nancy, of course, has not dropped a note and is kind of confused at first, but she quickly realizes that Kim is like subtly trying to get this message to her without anybody else noticing. So she takes it and she reads it. And the note says, must talk to you on the hike tomorrow. Urgent. Why you couldn't just put the message itself in the note and instead of just saying, I need to talk to you tomorrow. This is like my pet peeve of like, you know how when someone calls you and they leave you, or they call you and they leave a voicemail and they say, hey, I need to talk to you about something. Call me back. You could have said what it was you needed to talk about in the voicemail. Or you could have just texted me to say, hey, I need to talk to you. Can you call me? You know?
That's almost just as bad, though. Like, hey.
That's true. That's true.
Just put it in the text so that I'm not panicking in the meantime.
But just like the concept of giving someone a message that doesn't have the information that you needed in and you're trying to convey the message in a different way, it's just annoying to me, but that's what Kim does.
I'm going to slip you this note that says, I have a note to give you.
Yes. It's like, how many times are we going to do this? Anyway, after this demonstration, Nancy and George, I guess, inspired and excited by these tennis pros, decide that they want to, do a little practice on the court. So they go into the court to try to hit some tennis balls with the ball machine. And George switches it on. But it starts to shoot out rocks, not tennis balls. Which I don't even know if that would work. From what I understand of how ball machines work, like, doesn't there have to be like the right kind of like air pressure around the tennis ball? Like, I don't just think you could just have like a weirdly shaped rock go through it and fly through more than like a couple feet. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a physicist. What do I know? But that just seems unlikely. But anyway, the machine's shooting out rocks at Nancy. And so she's like trying to like dodge rocks. And eventually she makes it over to the side of the court where she's not being almost hit. And she like shouts at George to like turn off the machine. But when she looks, George is not there. Like she's just gone.
Ooh.
And so Nancy has to like ninja roll over to the ball machine to turn it off herself, which she does. And then she goes to look for George and she finds her like a few yards away, like under a tree. And George says that when she turned the machine on for Nancy, something like hit her over the head. She thinks it was like a tennis racket and she blacked out. So someone hit George over the head with a tennis racket and carried her off the court over to this tree.
How did Nancy not notice this
going
on?
And that's what I'm saying. And like the milliseconds that this takes to like turn on the ball machine and like get out of the way of the rocks, George is just gone. Someone has just carried her away. Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, together they go to the main office to try to see the Rosiers and talk about this incident. And they do, and they tell them about the ball machine. They talk about the Black Widow, and the Rosiers, of course, apologize for all of this and say that they're going to have Hank check out the machine. But when Nancy suggests calling the police, thinking that, like, hey, I think there's something more going on here, they refuse, saying that actually, you know, we have excellent security at Spa Solaire, so we don't need to do that. It's okay. And Nancy in her head, she's like, clearly you don't have good security considering someone got a Black Widow into our room, left it there on purpose, and just like put rocks in a ball machine. Not great security, guys. So Nancy, thinking all of this, later that night when they get back to their casita, decides that she wants to do a little snooping. She just kind of wants to go out, get the lay of the land, maybe try to figure out where the staff live. And so she slips out of their room and starts kind of walking. She hears some rustling behind her and realizes that someone is actually following her. And so she starts to try to like run away, but someone reaches out and grabs her.
It's just Elaine. And he's got a German Shepherd with him.
What the heck?
And he seems to be kind of angry. He like shines his flashlight in her face and is like, "What are you doing out here?" She's like, "I'm taking a walk." And,
excuse me, officer. I didn't realize that I was under arrest.
Right. This is a strange scene. Laurent comes up to them and is like, "What are you doing?" And Elaine tells him that Nancy's been snooping, which, I mean, is true, but he does not know that. And to Laurent's credit, he tells Elaine that, hey, Nancy's a guest. You need to treat her with courtesy. And, like, the guest is always right. But then Laurent is like, here, come with me, Nancy. I will walk you back to your casita. And Nancy's like, no. I just started my walk. I'm not done yet. And he's like, no. We have very wealthy clients that stay here, so we can't have people just, like, wandering around all the time. And Nancy's like, so what are you talking about? Does that mean that I'm not allowed to leave my room at night? And he's like, no. I mean, yeah. But, I mean, no, if you, like, need to go somewhere, just let us know. We can, like, send someone to escort you. But otherwise, why would you need to leave your room? That's weird. Stay in your room.
This is, like, major horror movie vibes. Because, like, they won't let you eat extra food. They won't let you leave your room. Like, you have
to drink
people
the
on
mystery
staff,
protein shake.
Drink the mystery protein shake, and you have people on the staff being like, I need to talk to you. Like,
help me. Get me out of here.
What the heck is going on at this place?
So, yeah, that's basically what Nancy has to do now is go back into her room because they won't let her out. So we flash to the next morning and Nancy decides she's going to go check out the ball machine. There's a tennis pro at the court now, so she goes and talks to them, and the tennis person tells her that one of the maintenance people, that morning, one of the maintenance people had like taken the machine apart, oiled it, put it all back together. So any evidence that was there potentially is now gone. So then afterwards, they are all going to get ready to go on the hike that Kim has planned for them. So Nancy, Bess, George, and all the rest of the guests pile into a van. And then they are all driven to Tonke Verde Falls, which is a very famous spot in the area. Supposed to be super beautiful with obviously a big waterfall. So they hike down and they're going to have lunch once they get, I guess, to the trailhead or whatever. It's a beautiful hike, but it is a little bit scary because of how steep it is. But they're able to make their way to the falls without any incidents. Then Nancy is like, all right, how do I get Kim by herself so that I can ask her about whatever that weird cryptic note was about? But she keeps like every time she's like, hey, Kim, come check out this leaf that I saw over here with me. Like every single time she tries, somebody else is too close to them. So she can't really ask about it. And then they decide to take pictures. And so she's like, oh, Kim, go stand over there and I'll take your picture and then stay there and I'll come to you. But then, like, right as Nancy is getting ready to make her way back over to Kim, there is this loud roar out of nowhere. And Nancy realizes that there is a solid wall of water rushing straight towards her. So where they're at with the falls, Kim is on one side of them. The whole rest of the group is on the other side. And then Nancy is, like, in this weird like median in the middle, essentially. No, median. That's not what you call it when it's water. But she's next to this tree, basically, and the water comes, and so she has to climb up the tree so that she doesn't drown. Right as she gets up the tree, the water gets to her, and she realizes that Kim has not been so lucky because by the time, everything, like the worst of it is over, she's gone. Yeah,
Horrifying.
so half of the people, and Nancy's still just like clinging to this tree, by the way. She can't get down either because the water is still really high. So half of the group that's on the other side of the bank is like waiting for them, and the other half decide to go and like get help. So it takes a really long time, and Nancy's still just clinging to the tree, but eventually help does come, and they have to just kind of wait for the water level to go down a little bit so that they can get to her. And then they start looking for Kim, but as I said, she is nowhere to be found. Bess does notice that Kim's camera is just stuck in the mud over by the edge of the water. So Nancy picks it up and is like, oh, maybe I can get this film developed, and maybe something is on here from the last picture that she took, maybe like a clue of where she would have gone. Okay, so eventually they make it back to the spa without Kim, but Nancy does hand the film over to the receptionist at the spa, and the receptionist agrees to go like get it developed for her. Then she runs into, what is his name? Elaine.
Yeah.
She runs into Elaine and Hank. And then another guest whose name is Rhonda comes up to Hank and indignantly asks where he was because she was supposed to have a writing lesson that afternoon and he was not there. And Hank's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was like running an errand and my car had some trouble. So I got stuck and I couldn't make it back in time. Very strange, though, that he happens to just like be unaccounted for at the same time that Kim goes missing. Very strange. The next day, there's still no news of Kim, and Nancy is getting worried because obviously we still don't know what that note was about, and maybe Kim was in danger or something and was trying to get Nancy's help, and now it's too late. They go to breakfast, and they notice that even though the portions are still really, really small, Bess is not really eating all of her food, or she doesn't finish what she's given. And Bess is like really in the mindset of like, oh, I don't need it because I'm going to have like such a productive day of losing weight that like, why would I start it off on the wrong foot by eating?
Oh my God.
Gosh, no. So George gets kind of worried, even like vocalizes a little bit of concern of like, don't you think that it would be a good idea to finish your breakfast? But yeah, so Bess is going to go to the gym, and Nancy and George decide to go, I guess, like follow to see what she's up to. And they notice that not only is she doing an aerobics workout, they have like an aerobics class. Bess stays after class and keeps working out and does like weightlifting. And so they think she's overdoing it, but they notice Elaine is encouraging her and is like egging her on with this workout, basically. Nancy tries to go make small talk with him, but she has too many questions.
Yes.
And so this scene is actually kind of funny. He's like, well, if you're going to stand here and like watch Bess work out, you should get on that treadmill while you're talking to me so that you're at least like being productive. And she's like, okay, fine. So she gets on the treadmill, and I guess he gets sick of her asking questions. So she just like keeps turning up the speed. So she's like essentially running and just too out of breath to talk. It's hilarious. But then suddenly, while this is going on, another guest whose name is Whitney starts like crying, and she starts like, you could tell she's in pain. She says that she thinks her arm is broken. Something has happened with one of the machines, I guess. We learned that she was like on this weightlifting machine, and one of the cables snapped, and it like yanked her shoulder when it snapped, and like maybe broke it, maybe dislocated something. I don't know. Not great. Nancy looks at this cable that snapped, though, and she notices that this was cut. This was not just something that frayed and snapped. Somebody tampered with this. So the doctor takes Whitney away to go get some x-rays and Whitney informs everyone that she is going to be calling her lawyer about this incident. She paid too much money to be here with shoddy equipment, without any safety. So yeah, not happy. Nancy tries to explain to Elaine that this definitely was not an accident, but he seems to be annoyed with her and just dismisses her. Nancy notices throughout this whole scene, though, Bess is still over there focused on her workout. She has not even slowed down with all the chaos going on. She's just still chugging away. So she's like, hey, Bess, we're going to go back to the casita. Do you want to come with us? And Bess is like, no, I have to get this workout done. I have to keep pushing myself. Yeah, so Nancy and George go back and they start eating some chocolate bars that Nancy's like, hey, I have these emergency chocolate rations in my bag. Do you want one? And so they're just like eating chocolate. Bess comes in at this point and they offer her one. And she's like, no, cannot ruin my diet with sugar. Absolutely not. George kind of more gently expresses some more concern to Bess at this time and tells her that if she wants to, she can go about doing this in a healthier way. They're like, you don't have to push yourself this way. There is better ways to do this and like do things that aren't going to hurt you. But Bess is like, nah, I know what's right for me. I'm going to keep doing this.
Mm-hmm. Props to George for this conversation too, I think, because the way that she handled it, I think, was really good. And she even goes so far as to say, like, if you really want to, you can do this. There's like a safe way to do it, and what you're doing it is unsafe. But also, I don't think you need to. Like, I think you look fine just the way that you are, and so I think she did really well. Oh, question,
I like
though.
this. Yeah, okay.
Is this the source of the Cocoa Kringle bars in the suitcase?
Oh, that's true. Nancy does travel with chocolate pretty often. I didn't even think about that.
I just, like, chocolate bars in the suitcase. I was like, oh my God, it's a Cocoa Kringle bar. And this came out in 1993. And so the first game was, definitely 98. Later than this. But, I was like, maybe whoever it was read this book and was like, you know what? I'm going to file that one away.
Nope, that's canon now. That was a Cocoa Kringle bar that they were eating. 100%. I love that. Yeah, I really like this George moment. We needed a George moment like this. Finally, something that was, a little bit more validating of Bess.
And I think George even offers to, like, help her, right? Like, she's saying, like, I can teach you, I can show you different ways to do this if you want to really do this. But, like, yeah.
Good for George.
Yeah.
This was a good moment, definitely. So they have their, speck of lunch, and then they go get facials. And at this point, another guest named Melina shows up at the, I guess, whatever room they're in, getting their facials. And she's being really weird. Like, she seems like she's interested in this service, but she will not allow the technician to touch her.
It's kind of part of a facial. You kind of have to, somebody's got to touch your face.
Right. And she's like, don't put any of those products on me. I'm like, well, a facial is putting products on your face. She's like, no, you don't need to do that. And I guess they're doing like a mud treatment thing. And she's like, what if you just gave me the mud and I went back to my room and I put it on myself there? And they're like, no, that's weird. And so finally the spa technician is like, why don't you just sit down? I'm going to be done with Nancy in just a second and then I'll come to you. And she's like, okay, fine, whatever. So she agrees to sit down. But then when the spa technician is done and comes back to her, she's like, all right, I'm ready to do yours now. And she's like, absolutely not. And she gets up and runs out of the room. Okay. That was bizarre. After this, the photos that Nancy had developed by the receptionist are ready. So they go to pick them up and then they go back to the casita to look through them. And they notice that there are a few pictures from the hike, actually. And they find one where it's a picture of Kim. And we can see just behind her is not a full person, but just their elbow, or like just their elbow and down. And we can just see their sleeve. And they're wearing a plaid shirt. Nobody was wearing plaid on their hike that day. I guess they remember that. So who else would have been there if it wasn't somebody from their group? Maybe it's not even somebody from Solaire. That's kind of strange. Also, maybe this indicates that Kim is in more danger than we thought. Maybe she wasn't washed away. Maybe this person just like used that opportunity for distraction to kidnap her.
Can I just say, this is a massive, like, logic leap that they're making here to be
what
like,
do you mean?
there's a flash flood and we have this one picture of Kim and then the elbow of this person who, even considering, okay, maybe yes, you've accurately remembered that not a single person was wearing plaid. Nobody had, like a plaid jacket or something that they put in their, backpack or like, and took it off and you didn't see it. Even considering that could be true. That now, because of somebody's elbow, we're like, well, clearly they kidnapped her.
Yeah. Makes sense to me, right?
Yeah, so at this point, well, it's not even really at this point. It's like the next day, they're at the pool, and Nancy is thinking about this plaid elbow in this photo. And she realizes that, Hank missed the writing lesson with Rhonda the day when they were on the hike, and he had that excuse about having car trouble, that he wasn't at the spa when everybody else was on the hike. So maybe Hank was lying and he didn't have car trouble. Maybe he was kidnapping Kim. Plus, he's the kind of guy who wears a lot of plaid shirts, so must have been him.
Guilty, obviously.
Okay, but this is also bananas thinking too, because so everybody here at the hike is from the spa Solaire, and everybody was introduced. Hank drove them from the airport to the spa. We introduced Hank. Everybody knows Hank. Everybody from the spa knows Hank. So thinking that Hank could have somehow made it onto this hike, snuck there, kidnapped Kim without anybody who knows him seeing him there? That's just...
He was hiding behind the waterfall.
Yeah, like where was he hiding? Like, anyway, so Nancy also realizes that there is this small adobe style house back behind the stables, and she's seen Hank go in and out of there. So she thinks that maybe Hank lives in that house. And so she really wants to go inside to try to snoop. So later that evening, Bess distracts Hank, and George acts as a lookout while Nancy breaks into the house to look for this plaid shirt. Can I just say, actually, that I think that this is one of their best plans that they have ever put in place and enacted.
Really? Yeah.
I do think a lot of the times in the mystery stories, we get these, like, wackadoodle plans where it's like, well, we'll just wait and drink some coffee for the bad guy to break into the museum, and we'll chat and have a great time. And, all that's the plan. But this plan is like, no, someone's distracting the person, someone's acting as a lookout, and the other person is doing the breaking in. That's a great plan. Yep. And it works pretty effectively for them, actually. So props to the girls for that one. So Nancy's able to get into the house through an open window. And she searches and she ends up finding a muddy plaid shirt on the bathroom floor. And it is a perfect match for the plaid that was in the picture. So it seems pretty likely that Hank is the one who is in that picture. And Nancy, for some reason, thinks that she can't take the shirt as evidence, like that she has to leave it there. I'm not sure why, but whatever. So she looks around some more, and she finds a photograph in the bedroom of a young woman. And when she picks it up, a newspaper clipping falls out of this photograph's frame, and it's an article about a woman blinded by tainted cosmetics. There's a picture of the same girl in this news clipping, and the article names her as Heather Sinclair, a prominent equestrian from the area, and apparently she was studying in Paris and ended up being blinded by a French mascara company named, oh god, I'm gonna butcher this one, Janus?
That's how I would guess. Good enough.
Yeah. So she sued this company, and they agreed to pay all her hospital bills, but the company ended up vanishing before they paid out everything that they owed to her. And so her father, whose name was Henry Sinclair, was forced to sell his ranch to pay for the legal fees to try to continue to get what it is that they were owed. And so Nancy wonders if Hank could be Henry Sinclair. I guess this is a tenuous link. Like, why else would he have this picture?
Sure, yeah.
I don't know. He clearly knows about it and is somehow related, but that's also a little bit of a leap for me. But whatever, Nancy.
I mean, Hank is a nickname for Henry, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So, I mean, it tracks.
Sure.
It's not the most clever alias, I guess, but...
No. But so Nancy has seen this and is thinking about this. And then George gives her the signal that someone is coming. So Nancy has to quickly hightail it out of the house. And she and George both sprint off and head back to the casita. Upon arriving at the casita, Nancy realizes that the silver bracelet that Ned gave her, which actually says on the inside, "To Nancy with love," is missing. She knows that she had it when she broke into Hank's house, but now she doesn't have it anymore. And so she can only assume that she must have lost it at Hank's house. And remember, on the inside, it says "To Nancy." So if he finds it, no question about who it was that broke into his house. Here's a tip. Here's a tip, fellow sleuths. When snooping in your suspect's home, don't wear a name tag, okay? Don't wear something that just has your first and last name on it and just drop it. Like, good grief.
Just take your social security card and just leave it on the coffee table.
This plan would have been good had Nancy not dropped a bracelet with her name on it at the person's house. Anyway. So she's kind of panicking about this. And then suddenly someone starts pounding on the door really hard. And when Nancy opens it, it's Hank. He's got a scowl on his face. Great. So luckily, Hank isn't confronting them about breaking into his house. He's just there because the Rosiers apparently want the three of them in their office, and he's been tasked to come get them. He's just kind of annoyed about it because he's trying to get to the stables. I think one of his horses is about to have a foal, and so he's delayed, and he's annoyed about it. Woo! So they go with Hank to the Rosier's office, and Hank leaves them there. And Jacqueline tells Nancy, Bess, and George that they actually have some news about Kim. Apparently, they got a typed letter from Kim that says that she's fine. She managed to make it to safety after the flood, but I guess because it was just kind of like a traumatic experience for her, that she needs some time away to kind of figure out what it is that she's going to do. And so she's not going to be returning to Spa Solaire, and she's actually going to be spending the next few weeks in Phoenix to kind of recover. And Nancy is immediately suspicious of this. The letter is typed, obviously, right? So it's don't know that, Kim wrote it. But it does have Kim's signature on it. So she typed it and then signed it. So and they actually pull out Kim's job application that has her signature on it, and the signatures match. So it does seem like Kim legitimately signed this letter. So it could be genuine. Nancy happens to ask as she's kind of leaving if the Rosiers know of or have ever heard of this Janus Cosmetics company, and they say no. Nancy doesn't believe it. Then Elaine walks them back to their casita, and Nancy asks how Whitney is doing after her shoulder injury, and Elaine says that she just pulled a shoulder ligament, but she's returning home tomorrow. And Nancy again tries to tell him that it wasn't an accident. And he gets so upset with her for bringing this up that he says that she needs to keep her opinions to herself. Rude. Once they get back to the casita, Nancy immediately goes to make a call because when they showed her Kim's job application, she memorized the phone number that was listed on that job application. I know.
Good job.
Way to go, Nancy. So she calls, and this reaches Kim's family home. So Nancy leaves her phone number, hoping that Kim's family will call her back. Also earlier, I think the other day, Nancy had called Carson to ask him to look up some information, and he ends up calling them back that night. And he says that 5 years before the Rosiers showed up and started their first spa in St. Martin, Jacqueline officially retired for being a fashion model in Paris. She wasn't married to Laurent at the time, and it seems like in those 5 years before they opened that spa that she just kind of had dropped off the face of the earth. There's no information about her until she shows up in St. Martin, married to Laurent 3 years ago. So interesting. Carson can't find anything about Laurent either, except for his marriage certificate to Jacqueline, which is very odd.
Suspicious, yes.
He did learn more about Heather Sinclair, though. Apparently, she and several others sued Janus because of this mascara giving them eye infections, and Janus did agree to the settlement but never paid it, which basically we knew that already. But it's very mysterious because one day the company existed, and the next day their office was just, empty. Their bank accounts were closed, and all the staff were gone, which is just wild.
That's how you know your MLM is legit, and they disappear overnight. Yep.
And then also we learn that the owner of Janus was this chemist named Pierre Denon, and his car went off of a cliff and exploded, and no one ever found the body. I'm like, did this happen at the same time? Like, what the heck? Just imagine there is an entire company here full of different employees. Maybe not many, maybe it's a small company, but maybe they have 10 employees. And then one day they're just all gone and you have no way to reach any of these people.
Bizarre.
It's so weird. So Nancy asks if Carson's thinking what she's thinking, if he thinks that Pierre Denon could be Laurent Rosier. And that's exactly what Carson is thinking. It's, that guy disappears without a trace, supposedly dead, but nobody ever finds his body. And then suddenly this Laurent Rosier guy springs up out of nowhere, married to this former supermodel.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Right. So that's interesting information. And the next morning, they all go on a group run. That's how I spend my free times, going on group runs.
That you've paid for, by the way. You've spent a lot of money to go on this run.
In Arizona. Flew all the way here. Anyway. So it's apparently a pretty intense run, and people are kind of like, I think, like dropping out this run, like falling behind, and even Nancy is kind of like lagging because it's so intense. But they finally kind of make it towards the end of the run, when Melina, one of the other guests, screams because a heavy wooden sign nearby crashes to the ground and like barely misses her. And so Nancy goes over to look at the sign, and what do you know? It looks like whatever was holding up the sign was cut. So we have another incident of sabotage. And Nancy actually calls Elaine over. She's like, are you going to tell me that this was an accident too? Sassy Miss Drew. At this point, Jacqueline actually drives up, and she has an angry conversation with Elaine in French. And the rest of the group ends up leaving with Elaine, while Nancy, Bess, and George stay back to talk to Jacqueline. And Nancy says that, she knows that this is no accident, and, asks Jacqueline, like, who would do something like this? And Jacqueline says, I don't know. Maybe somebody just jealous of my success. And then she kind of drives off, seemingly unconcerned about this. But Nancy thinks that Jacqueline actually knows exactly what's going on here and is secretly probably terrified and is just in denial about it all. Great. Later that afternoon, Nancy does actually get a call back from Kim's family. And Nancy asks if they've heard from Kim. And they say, oh yeah, Kim actually called us yesterday morning. Well, so that's good news, right? They've actually heard Kim's voice, and it's Kim's family, right? So they would know what Kim sounds like. Remember, this is pre-deepfake, you guys. This was 1993, so that's not possible. And Nancy asks if Kim said where she was, and they say that no, she didn't. But they did tell her, or Kim did tell them that she quit her job at the spa because she needed time off. And Nancy mentions that Kim's letter to the Rosiers said that she was going to go to Phoenix. But Kim's mom, who Nancy is talking to at this point, says, oh, no, there's no way that could be true. Kim hates the city. But Nancy's like, oh, no, but she said she specifically wanted to go to Phoenix to go to, like, museums. Like, she wanted to go hang out in museums or something. And Kim's mom is like, no way. Like, I haven't been able to get Kim inside of a museum since she was 10. Kim doesn't like spending time indoors. So this doesn't make any sense. This is, very out of character for Kim. This doesn't track. But, her mother did hear her voice on the phone, so that's good. It probably seems like she's at least alive. But is it possible that someone forced Kim to call her family and forced Kim to write this letter and say that everything was fine?
Ugh. So Nancy starts thinking, hey, maybe Kim is pretty clever. Maybe she put those things in her letter on purpose because anybody who knew her well enough would know that's out of character for her. Something suspicious is going on, right? Pretty good theory.
This is another example of why everyone should have a code word with their friends and family to alert someone if something's wrong. So.
Absolutely. And now Nancy is convinced more than ever that Hank is this Henry Sinclair person and that he is definitely involved in Kim's disappearance. She thinks that Laurent is this Pierre Denon guy and that Hank/Henry is there to get get revenge for what happened to his daughter. Maybe Kim possibly discovered something going on, or maybe realized that Hank was the one behind the sabotage, so maybe he's the one who kidnapped her to prevent her from talking more. Now Nancy decides, all right, we got to involve the police, but first we have to ask Jacqueline's permission. Okay. So we go to her office and Nancy lays everything out for her. And she says, hey, look, I know this spa is being sabotaged. And I know that, or I think I know who is responsible. And I think we should call the police. And Jacqueline is like, no, you have an overactive imagination. Stop meddling. Get out of my office.
Cool.
So Nancy goes on a unsanctioned, unsupervised walk all by herself and happens to run into Hank. And he corners her. And it's like, oh, I just thought I'd give you back this little bracelet that you left in my house. It's very threatening, makes it very, very clear that he knows that she's on to him, and ultimately does just like give back the bracelet, though, and says, don't do it again, and leaves. Okay. So now we're going to go on a little excursion, and everybody's really excited because it means we actually get to eat. But they're going to go to this place called Old Tucson, which is like a theme park or like a soundstage that looks like the Old West. So they're going to go do Old Westy type of things. Everybody kind of is allowed to just like go off and do their own thing and do whatever they want within this old theme park. So Nancy decides that she is going to follow Hank around. And also he and Melina seem to be having some private conversation. And Melina's the one who didn't want the mud mask thing and kind of ran off and got weird about it. So they're having a little conversation, but then there's an announcement over the loudspeaker that says, oh, we're about to have a gunfight, like a show, like everybody can watch, basically. And most of the guests, including Melina, go off to watch, but Hank starts moving in the opposite direction of the crowd. So Nancy's like, all right, I'm breaking off from the crowd, and I'm going to go follow him. He walks straight out into this like roped off area and into this old building that looks like an old mission. So Nancy goes inside as well. And as soon as she does, something goes over her head, something covers her mouth, something grabs her arms and pins them behind her. So this is Hank. He has gagged, blindfolded, and tied Nancy up and slings her over his shoulder and starts carrying her somewhere. Then she's just like dropped on the ground and she can't really tell what's going on because she's blindfolded, but she seems to think that she's just been left here, that Hank has now walked away. But now the floor starts to move.
Oh my God.
And Nancy realizes that she is in an old-timey stagecoach. Now, nearby, we can still hear Hank. He's talking to somebody about the stagecoach and how it's supposed to be used in this stunt because they're also, by the way, this is a real soundstage and we're using it to film a movie like right now. And okay, so he's like talking to somebody on the set about the stunt. And he also mentions that it's going to be set on fire and thrown off a cliff. We love throwing things off of cliffs in this book.
Gosh.
So if we're still in any doubt about Hank, I think we know now that he is our bad guy. He does come up to the door of the stagecoach and say, goodbye, Miss Drew. Think of it this way. At least you'll be the first guest at the spa to die in a stagecoach disaster.
What is that supposed to mean?
Some honor? Okay. But okay, so Nancy realizes, like, okay, this is real bad. She realizes what's going on. The stagecoach starts to, like, drive away, I guess, out of control. It's really bumpy, and she manages to, like, get over to the door, kick it open, and throw herself out onto the ground. As soon as she does this, everybody on set starts freaking out and are like, wait, hold on. That was not supposed to happen. What is going on? So they stop the stagecoach. Somebody comes over. She's kind of dazed and bruised up a little bit, but she's fine. Somebody takes her blindfold off and is like, what are you doing? Why did you try to insert yourself into the movie? And she's like, what movie? What? But we learned that this is the producer of this movie. And then, they like get her up and everything. And she explains that she was put in there and was not supposed to be there. This was not her choice. But then Elaine and George make their way over and Nancy explains what happened. And they're like, all right, we got to go catch Hank because he is getting away already. So Bess goes to call the police and then she, George, and Elaine go to the parking lot. Once they get to the parking lot, they see, this is wild. They see Hank driving off in a Solaire van, but I guess because it's like, it's really busy area. It's a crowded parking lot. It's taking him a while to like get out of the parking lot and actually drive away. So Nancy's like, all right, Elaine, give me your keys. And he's like, no. Why would I do that? Absolutely not. And she's like, no, we need to go follow him. I need the Solaire car. Give me the keys. And he grabs Nancy by the arm and tries to force her into the car so that he can drive them to follow Hank. And Nancy says she doesn't want to do that because she theorizes that, hey, what if he's like in cahoots with Hank and is really like, taking me away even further from the crowd so that they can injure me for real. There's no way that I'm getting in a car with you. So all of a sudden she just like pretends that like, oh, ow, I'm so injured, and like falls on the ground, which allows George to like sneak up and like leg sweep Elaine from behind and steal the keys from him. So they like knock this guy down, steal his keys, and then take off running through the parking lot. Get to the car, and they manage to start the car. And they start driving away, and then all of a sudden, boom! Elaine jumps on the hood of the car.
Oh my god!
So they're like speeding away, and then he crashes onto the hood, and so George brakes really hard, which flings him off of the hood and into the road. Oh. And now for some reason Nancy and George jump out of the car to go check and see if he's hurt.
Like, why?
But he's clearly fine. Yeah, this is crazy.
Well, it's like you leg swept him before. Clearly you didn't care how hard he hit the ground then. Like, why do you care now? I thought you were trying to get away from him.
Well, he's fine because he jumps up and he grabs Nancy, calls her crazy, and it's like, what do you think you're doing getting in my way like this? And Nancy's like, in your way? You were in my way, sir. By this point, Hank is long gone, by the way. He's already driven off. And Elaine confesses to us at this point that the Rosiers hired him to be a bodyguard. But also just like pose as a personal trainer because actually they've been getting blackmail for the last year. The Rosiers wouldn't pay this blackmail note that they got or whatever, and then that's when the sabotage started at the spa. So apparently he has suspected Hank for a while now, has been following him, actually has been following him for weeks, and now that Nancy's shown up, she has complicated everything.
So Elaine isn't even a real trainer.
Right.
And he has been supervising everybody's workouts, Bess's workout, and he is not qualified to do that.
And somebody got injured under his watch.
The lawsuit that you could bring against the spa is insane. Because not only is it the money that like you outed, it's the money that shelled out to get there. It's the money for your, healthcare, the money for like trauma,
physical therapy,
like all of this stuff. Like you could sue them for millions. You could get millions. Anyway, sorry.
Not even a real trainer, but we trust him more now, I guess, because he's told us the truth. So now he agrees to drive us. We all pile back into the van and he goes, actually, let's go check Hank's house. And Nancy's like, why would he go to his house? And he's like, no, not the house that you broke into the other night, his other house. And we learn that because he's been following him for so long, Elaine has like figured out that Hank has this other house that's like way off the path, like is set back in the mountains. So let's go there. So by this point, it is pretty dark outside. We're on this like super steep, scary mountain path with, we are super far from any town or anything like that. It's also like super overgrown with all the vegetation around. So it's just really hard to see where we're going or what we're doing. But eventually they make it to a footpath and they decide that they're going to park the car and just walk so that Hank doesn't hear them approaching or anything. So they get down to the house and there's no van there. So we're like, okay, well, maybe Hank didn't come here after all, but maybe this is where he's hiding Kim. So let's go check it out. It's unlocked, so they just go in and they find a door inside the house that has a padlock on the outside of it. So somebody's locked in this room. So Nancy picks the lock and she sees that when she opens it, she sees that there's a staircase leading down to the basement.
So they go down to the basement and they find, of course, Kim.
Yay!
She's tied up, and so they untie her, and they are like, are you okay? She says she hasn't been hurt. She's just been kept tied up in the dark down here in the basement. The only time she's ever been let out is to, like, go pee in the upstairs bathroom.
Yeah.
She confirms that it was Hank who kidnapped her, and so they're like, okay, well, like, let's get you out of here. They start going up the stairs to leave, but when they reach the top, realize that someone has shut the door behind them and is now locking the padlock. So now we're all locked down here in the basement. Kim explains kind of what happened now that, Hank followed them down the trail that day at the falls because she had caught him deliberately tampering with heat controls on the jacuzzi. And that's what Kim wanted to talk to Nancy about. And George asked Kim, like, well, why did you tell the Rosiers? Why come to Nancy? And Kim explains that she and Hank had actually always been friends, and so she didn't want to get him in trouble. But she soon realized that he was the one responsible for all the other sabotage at the spa. And so she told Hank that she wouldn't say anything about it if he would just stop, but guesses that Hank just couldn't take the chance that she wouldn't say anything, and so kidnapped her. Elaine also now confirms for us that Henry Sinclair is Hank's real name, and that Janus was Laurent Rosier's first cosmetics company. Basically, everything Nancy has thought and suspected up to this point is true. But unfortunately, Elaine doesn't have any proof of this, so I guess that's why he's not gone to the authorities, but also the Rosiers hired him, so why would he go to the authorities? I don't know. Anyway, so they kind of like look around this basement. They're like, okay, was there any other way we can get out? There's not. And so they start trying to knock down the door. And then they realize, well, somebody is out there, right? Somebody locked us in here. It's probably Hank. So they're like yelling for Hank. They're like saying, like, Hank, like, let us out of here. Like, it's okay. Like, we won't turn you in, like, just let us out. But then someone answers who is not Hank. It's a woman's voice who answers them, and she starts like hysterically laughing and asks them, how do you like being in the darkness? So from this comment, Nancy realizes that this must be Heather Sinclair, Hank/Henry's daughter. So Nancy tries to convince her that if she lets them out, they're going to make sure that Laurent is brought to justice. But Heather says that, her father promised her the same thing, and he went bankrupt trying to bring Laurent to justice. So now she's going to make the four of them pay for it.
None of them had anything to do with the spa.
Mm-hmm. It's unhinged.
I guess Kim worked there, but otherwise.
Right.
What?
Yes. Yeah.
That felt like a very ableist portrayal.
Yes.
Yes. All of her motivations, yeah.
Yeah, basically it's kind of just like implied that because of her accident and because of, her not being able to see anymore, that that Heather has just gone off the deep end, that she's just absolutely gone crazy and just wants to hurt everyone. Great. Yeah, but so then Heather tells them if they even touch the basement door again to try to get out, she'll set the entire house on fire. With them inside. Great.
And doesn't even care if she herself is also hurt in the fire or dies in the fire because of her disability. It makes life not worth living. Is that the message that they're trying to send? Very strange.
Yeah. So Heather sits upstairs, I guess, listening, making sure that they comply with her orders. So they all have to go back down the basement stairs. And upon getting back down to the basement, Nancy ends up noticing that there's a hammer and a crowbar in the corner. Would have been helpful to have that a few minutes ago. But so they decide to try to wait until Heather falls asleep and then try to escape. And then later, they start to hear like these howls outside. Nancy realizes that these are coyotes surrounding the house. It's just like a cacophony of coyote howls outside. And Nancy realizes that they can use the coyotes howling as a diversion, so to escape. So they start using this crowbar to try to pull up the floorboards in like the roof because the roof is made up of the floor upstairs. So they're trying to like essentially get a hole into the roof of this basement so they can climb out of the basement, which they end up doing. They get a hole into the kitchen and they manage to hoist everybody up through this floor. And then once they all make it up, they start for the back door, but they realize the back door is locked. And then Heather, I guess, has woken up or whatever, has found them and caught them. Also, Heather is holding a lit match and a kerosene lamp and now says that she doesn't care if she lives or dies anymore, right?
Oh, that's this part. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Says it now. Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, though, Heather's match just like goes out. And so she has to try to like light a new one. But so Nancy takes this opportunity as she's like fumbling with the matches to tackle her. Unfortunately, in the process, Nancy is knocked out by the kerosene lamp that Heather is holding. And when she wakes back up, she's on the floor of the kitchen, but Elaine has Heather pinned. So we're somewhat safe now. And then we hear outside someone talking through a police megaphone. It's the police. Go figure. They have the house surrounded. They already have Hank in custody, and eventually they get into the house and they arrest Heather as well. Apparently, Hank confessed to everything, and just as they are carting Heather away, Nancy overhears her mumble something that sounds like, "It's not over yet." So Nancy realizes that tomorrow there is this launch party for a new cosmetics line that the Rosiers are making. And so she asks Heather, what's going to happen at the launch party? Do you have something planned at the launch party? And Heather just starts maniacally laughing and says, "Why don't you go to the party and find out?" Would you believe that's exactly what Nancy does?
Yep.
She does try to speak to Jacqueline and Laurent first and tries to convince them to call the whole thing off, but they refuse. So the girls just go to this launch party. And Laurent goes up to the front of the room and he starts like announcing their new product line. He has these like big boards that have like photos and like information on. They're like big advertisements, right? And so he starts uncovering them one by one. And eventually he gets to this one that he uncovers. Turns out it's not an ad for their new, a makeup line or whatever. It's actually a photo of himself holding up a bottle of a Janus product with the headline about the lawsuit for the blindness and the disfiguration that he caused. But Laurent like hurriedly covers it up and moves on. But then the next photo is another photo of a woman who has badly marked skin, and there's a caption that said, "Pierre Denon and Janus did this to me." And so Pierre starts to get angry and is like, "I don't recognize these pictures. Who did this?" And then Melina, do you guys remember Melina? She stands up in the crowd and says, "Which picture don't you recognize, Pierre? The one of yourself or the one of my sister?" Ooh, twist.
This was a good twist.
That's
I
true.
liked it, honestly. Yeah.
That's true. I had forgotten about Melina, and so this was a good twist. So now we realize that Melina is actually here to sabotage as well. Her sister was also impacted by this, a faulty Janus product, right? So, and remember, this is a launch party, right? So there's media and press, like, all up in this place. And so the reporters there start to ask questions and be like, Laurent, are you going to respond to this woman? Like, what are these pictures about? Blah, 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 blah. And Nancy realizes like, oh, okay, so this is the final act of sabotage. It wasn't intended to endanger anyone. It was just intended to expose the Rosiers. So hopefully they'll get what's coming to them now that the press knows all about this, right?
Why was this not plan A? Why was kidnapping a random employee plan A?
Like you have this person who has changed his identity and you learn the identity. And instead of like calling the authorities and being like, "Hey, we found that guy, here he is," you're like, let's cut down a sign.
Yeah.
Let's leave a black widow in a guest room of the spa that he owns. Yeah, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that evening, after all of this is over, Bess cheerfully reports that she's lost 3.5 pounds and thinks that in spite of all the awful things, Spa Solaire is a great place. Nancy and George do ask her if she plans to keep up the diet and all the exercise when she gets back to River Heights. And she does say that no, she's not going to do that. That weighing a few extra pounds isn't the worst thing in the world. Okay. And they have like this very quick conversation about how people don't have to look like fashion models, and that Jacqueline was a fashion model and she was a horrible person and she had a miserable life, so no one should want to look like that.
It's a weird message.
That's it.
Yeah. That's it.
So we're not talking about, any of the methods, how the methods that we were using to achieve those supermodel looks were dangerous. We're not talking about anything like that. We're not talking about body image really at all.
No.
All we're talking about is you don't want to look like people who are miserable, do you?
Yeah.
What does how people look has nothing to do with who they are. Which I guess is kind of what they're saying. I guess is kind of what they're saying, but it's also like, you're not enough. Like that shouldn't be the message here.
Yeah. No.
So, yeah.
I really thought we were going to have the big, like, classic intervention scene of, like, Bess, we're worried about you. But it turns out to be like, Bess, you're not going to do that anymore, right? Like, you know better now. And she's like, yeah, I guess. And then that's it. 3.5 pounds because I starved myself for a whole week and my body would have done that anyway. And that's water weight or, yeah.
Yep. That's it.
The end.
Oh,
I'm so glad that's over.
Yeah.
That was a bad one.
It really was. There are some other things that I want to call to light while we're on this topic of, like, the messages that this book is sending or not sending in regards to, healthy habits. Right? So it's not just Bess who is impacted by all of this, because I think that there are probably certain people who might respond to this and be like, it could be that the spa itself isn't really promoting these unhealthy messages. It's just Bess who's kind of taking that and running with it.
But refusing to feed your guests.
Yes, exactly. But that's definitely not what's happening, right? Because of that. But also we, throughout the book, we're talking to these other guests, right? And we're seeing them respond to this stuff as well. Like there's this one married couple, I think in particular, where the husband is like, they don't feed us anything at this place. Like, I'm hungry. The point where they go to the Old West, like Old Tucson, like town or whatever, they all rush to go binge eat. Like almost every single one of the spa guests go to like the cafe area or whatever. Like they make a point to say that. Like George, the couple, like almost all of them. The only ones who don't go are Bess, who goes off with Elaine to go do something, and then Melina and Hank, who are talking.
Right.
So, yikes. But then also something else that I noticed was, let me just find it there. Oh, they go to the launch party. So at the launch party, I think it's that same husband and wife. They go there and he's like, oh, thank God they have like real food here to eat. And so he like goes over to like start eating the food. But his wife says, let me find it. Oh, Max, I'm sure they know this isn't a regular spa meal, said his wife, smiling. You did lose 4 pounds, you know. She leaned forward and kissed her husband. It's healthier for you, and you look very handsome.
4 pounds is not going to make a visual difference to somebody.
But also, he lost 4 pounds in a week.
That's not good.
No.
That's dangerous.
So this whole thing is very bad and very scary.
Also, I don't think that we really mentioned it, but they kind of hint at like, Bess has a crush on Elaine.
Yeah.
Because that's Bess. She's going to have a crush on somebody. And there are so many points where she's like starving herself because she wants to look good for guys. Not just because she wants to look good, but because she has to do that. Because it's the only way that she I guess feel validated enough to be good enough to date these guys or something like that.
Well, and then that brings into question too, is like the whole thing is like Bess being encouraged to like overwork herself, to
Mm-hmm.
not eat food by someone that she has a crush on.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
really nasty power dynamic there.
Yeah. And like we don't, and she hangs out with Elaine a lot off page. Like we don't know what it is that they're talking about, that they're doing. Like we don't know what it is that he's saying to her. And there's that point where like Bess doesn't eat all of her breakfast or whatever, and George thinks like, is the spa encouraging her not to eat food? Is Elaine encouraging her not to eat?
It's concerning.
Yeah. And so it's just really, and Elaine isn't even a qualified personal trainer. He was just hired as someone's bodyguard. He does say at one point, oh, well, my dad was a personal trainer, and so I learned kind of from him. But it's like, what? No.
That does not make you qualified.
No. This is an expensive ass spa. You're telling me they don't have someone who went to school for training or physical therapy or anything like that? That's insane.
But they do have a qualified doctor on staff who's going around telling people that they need to lose X amount of pounds in 5 days.
Yeah. So.
And who's telling Nancy, who is like deemed the like, healthy person, that she's fine. She's not overly athletic like George is, but she's fine. There's nothing out of the norm that she would need to do for her own regimen, but she's still expected to starve herself and overwork herself.
Yep. So, yeah. So, I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's icky.
There were so many times where I had to put the book down. It took me a long time to finish because I had to put the book down and just walk away because it was so upsetting. It's so many different points where it's like, oh, and here's what Bess is doing to herself, because why? People who don't care about her or encouraging her to do things that will result in her getting hurt.
Yeah. There's other concerning things in this book, right? We talked about Heather and Heather's portrayal of being just crazy because she went blind. People don't go crazy when they turn blind. So it's just a not good characterizations, ableist, like you said, but also they do weird things with Hank too. They try to like, I guess, moralize Hank's actions. Like, there's this point where, so when they catch him, they explain how they caught Hank, and they say that the only reason why they did catch him was because he was so desperate to get back to the spa because one of his horses was sick. And so it's like, oh, well, but really he's a good guy because he cares about animals.
Oh, and because he tried to, quote unquote, save Kim from the flood.
Right. Yes, so Kim makes a point where she says, like, they're down in the basement, and Kim's like, well, in a weird way, Hank saved my life, because if he hadn't kidnapped me at that exact moment, I would have died in the flash flood. And so it's like,
I guess, thank goodness.
Why are we doing these mental gymnastics to try to call Hank a good guy? Do we not remember what he said to Nancy in the stagecoach? He said
he tried to kill her.
He tried to kill her and made a snotty comment at her about, like, oh, how she's going to be the first person to die at Spa Solaire. He's evil.
He's going to be a movie star, Nancy.
He's evil.
Great.
I don't care how much he cares about horses, and I don't care that he saved Kim's life by kidnapping her. Like, What are we doing? What are we saying?
And even, like, just the fact that his motivation is like, oh, he's not doing it for himself. He's doing it for his daughter.
Right. It's not
None
enough.
of this is the selfless man that they're trying to make him out to be.
No. And so it's like Hank is portrayed as crazy, right? Because of all this weird shenanigans. And then Heather is portrayed as being crazy. And then they try to do this juke thing where it's like, oh no, Hank's not actually crazy. He's really a good guy. It's like, no, what? Like, what are we? Too many crazy people in this story. Too many people who don't have, like, ordered thinking, right? Like,
right.
And so, yeah, it's just the villains. So the villains weren't good, right? Like, their actions weren't thought out. The moralization of the attempt to moralize them was weird. All the diet culture stuff was weird. The, starvation diet stuff weird, bad. And then the story in and of itself is like the mystery doesn't, like, this isn't the Glass Onion. Like, there's no twists. There's no like confusion. There's no twin stuff happening.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing exciting here. So yeah. What's to like about this book?
I'm trying. I've been thinking about my flashlight score this whole time, and I've been trying to find something to its credit of like, oh, at least it did that well, or, we got like a good Nancy Best George moment. No, I can't justify giving this. No, I can't give it any credit.
Yeah.
For anything here. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking too. I'm trying to think. I guess it was funny in moments, but I don't think it was supposed to be funny.
No.
I think it was unintentionally funny. Like, I find it funny that Bess is involved in an MLM. I don't know why. I just think that's funny. But I don't think they thought that was funny.
The almost hitting Elaine with the car part, that was kind of funny, to be fair.
That's pretty funny, but also I don't think they meant for that to be funny. I think they meant for that to be kind of like scary and dramatic. Yeah, and the only reason why I thought that was funny was because I hate Elaine. And so the physical comedy of that I thought was funny. Like laughing when someone falls down. It's Schadenfreude, right? But like...
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, so... Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I think that's about all I got. What about you?
Yeah, I'm good. That's all I've got too.
Let's
flashlight score.
Wash our hands and move on. Yes, flashlight score. A 1.5.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard for me to get through, and it was at least quick. Like, it wasn't painful, right? I was just like, okay, let's just go, But I didn't enjoy it by any means. So, aside from the very funny moments that weren't supposed to be funny. So, I'll give it like a half a flashlight for that. Yeah, so 1.5.
That's a good one. Yeah. I'm trying to think of any reason of like, oh, well, it doesn't necessarily deserve a 1. It's not that bad. But why doesn't it deserve a 1? Like, I did feel like it was hard to get through. I had to force myself to keep picking it back up. I'll give it a 1.5 as well, though, honestly.
I feel like there are books that were more painful to read.
There are definitely worse ones. Absolutely.
And so I think that's really more of my justification for giving it a half, because I didn't find it that bad. Like, I still think the one that is the worst for me is Secret of the Old Lace.
Okay, yeah.
That one was so hard for me, and I don't know why. This one, I feel like we at least, like, it wasn't Greek symbol mystery. Like, we at least there was some logic underpinning where the girls went and when, and like I could follow their train of thought.
That's fair.
So there was that, but yeah, that's not much,
Yeah. And like you said, there were some honestly humorous moments, even if unintentional.
Right.
Even if my gag reflex was acting up this whole time, like, don't think about what they're doing to themselves and their bodies and the way they're torturing themselves, because it's just like devastating to think about, especially just that age as well. They're so young. They shouldn't be torturing themselves in this way. They shouldn't have to go through this.
Wait, but so old people should, Kori?
No, definitely not. Just like,
they're so young.
I just mean young people have so much just societal pressure on them as it is that they don't need the additional. Nobody should have to deal with that at all. Just to be clear, not old people or young people, but especially someone so impressionable that is going to be more susceptible to these messages that you're not good enough. You need to change things about yourself.
Gotcha.
You're just it's just one more thing piling on to somebody who's so young. Somebody that's a little bit older and is a little bit maybe more like sure of themselves in their life might
the experience to know when someone is
say like
giving them bad advice.
Yeah, that sounds bad for me. I don't want any part of that. Where when you're young, it's like, okay, maybe I'll just listen because you are the experts and I paid you all this money and I'm here to starve myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yay. So 1.5 flashlights.
Wow. Let's talk about our next episode, because we have some very exciting stuff coming up that is way better than this and what I'd rather talk about instead.
Yes, such exciting news. We were so happy to have the honor to get to talk to Jen Fisher.
Yes. We got to interview her, had just the most amazing conversation. She is so lovely, so nice, and she's got a million incredible stories. And just so happens that she knows everything there is to know about Nancy Drew. So it was a great conversation.
Yeah. And so that'll be our next episode. You get to listen to that. And then we also have a little follow-up episode. I say little follow-up episode. It's actually quite a big episode that has a lot of really great information in it. It's going to be a history of episode, a history of Nancy Drew illustrators. And so that'll come out very shortly after the interview with Jen. So be on the lookout for that, you guys.
Yeah, it feels like both of these have been a very long time coming. I love doing the history episodes, so anything that we can do to just lend more information about, Nancy's origins. I love it.
And Kori is a master of research, and you guys, the work that she puts into these episodes is insane. So I'm very excited, and I think that you should be too, because it's going to be great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see y'all then. I cannot wait for you to hear it, so I hope you'll tune in and join us.
We'll see you then, regular Drews.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there,
thanks for listening.